I'm Karen Caldwell, and I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. I am 27 years old, and I have two beautiful little girls. My daughters have separate fathers. My oldest daughter, I was never married to her father. She just turned 8 in September. Her name is Josie. My youngest daughter, who will be 5 in January, is Andy Faye. Her father and I married in 2007. After about a year and a half of marriage, his lies started to unravel, and he basically turned out to be a con artist. I did everything possible to save our marriage. I confronted him, did the best we could. It didn't work. And ultimately, I went to my oldest daughter's father and told him that I would be filing for divorce after Christmas, and that I needed him to keep Josie and make sure everything was, that she did not have any drama throughout the divorce. He failed to protect her, and he went to my husband and told him of my plans. My husband's father is the head dean of Union University. Union is Tennessee's 5th largest employer and the largest Christian college this side of the country. When he found out that I had planned to divorce him, he parentally kidnapped our daughter and filed divorce papers and an order of protection against me. In his order of protection, he claimed that I tried to murder our youngest daughter by brushing her teeth with adult fluoride toothpaste. I had that dismissed and went around frantic trying to get a lawyer to answer the divorce papers. It was very expensive, but I found one, answered, and filed multiple emergency motions for custody. Throughout that time, I'd had my husband investigated. He had found out that he was a 2-time aggravated felon, a 3-time DUI offender, who'd been in and out of jail multiple times. He had a con that he was a loan officer or mortgage broker in our house, and he was working from home while I was working at a paralegal's office. While at work one day, he took our daughter, filed the papers on me, and would not let me see our daughter. Every day after work, I called to see her. I was threatened with jail and trespassing, everything under the sun, so I did not go over there. I believe it was 6 months after our divorce case was filed. I had filed 3 or 4 different motions to be heard in court, and every single motion was continued by Chancellor James Butler. Chancellor Butler continued my set hearing dates with no new dates, and allowed an attorney who was not my husband's attorney on file and who was an attorney from Chancellor Butler's former partnership to continue all of my set hearing dates, essentially bankrolling his former partnership. I sued Chancellor Butler after 6 months of this without being able to see my daughter. When I sued him, I basically took a one-way ticket on the Madison County Railroad Express and have been on it ever since. When I sued James Butler, well, a few months before I had sued Butler, I had filed in juvenile court because Josie's father had upheld his end of the bargain with my husband and began to keep Josie from me. I filed in juvenile court, and I was heard in juvenile court on July 13th, 2010 by juvenile court judge Christy Little. At that hearing, she asked me why we were there, what was going on. I told her, John and I had not been married, he was not on my daughter's birth certificate, and he had kept her from me. She asked me who I would be comfortable with as a guardian ad litem for my daughter, a man or a woman. I said a woman. She appointed Joseph Howell. Joseph Howell's an attorney in Jackson who never came to my house, would not talk to me, would not see the photos that I had taken of my home and in Josie's room. And it came out later in court that he told my daughter that if she came to live with her mother, that all of her animals would die at her father's, that nobody would feed her. This came out of, my daughter told a new judge that this was what happened, and Joseph was ultimately off the case. At the end of that, we had 2 days, July 13th and August 6th, of hearings for Josie. Her father, she was born out of wedlock. He was not on her birth certificate. The state of Tennessee has never done a paternity test. I have a letter from Vital Records verifying these facts. And at the end of the second trial, Judge Little gave full custody of my daughter to her father. and signed restraining orders against me and my boyfriend, not allowing me to drive the hour I was driving to eat lunch with her. There was Tennessee, she might as well have given my daughter to you. And essentially that's what she did. John is her biological father, but had no legal rights. 2 months later, I found myself in front of Roger Page. Roger Page is a circuit court judge who was designated to hear my case by Chancellor Butler after I had sued Chancellor Butler. Roger had a 2-day trial, September 23rd and 24th of 2010, where my ex admitted to being an aggravated felon who was just let out of drug and alcohol rehab. He told Judge Page that he planned on living with his parents indefinitely. He told Judge Page that he needed to do so to be able to function as a normal adult. He admitted to being a past drug dealer. He was caught multiple times on stand perjuring himself. I had multiple teachers from my eldest daughter's school come to testify on my behalf, past employers, physicians, friends. It was a slam dunk case. I mean, he had, at the time of trial, he had kept my daughter from me for 10 months, which is a part in the statute of custody that would make him not eligible for permanent custody. At the end of the 2-day trial, during the trial, I testified that in 1989, when I was 5 years old, I went to Pathways. My father had taken me to Pathways for ADD medication. I was in kindergarten and I have ADD. My father also testified that we did not have a relationship, that he had been physically abusive to me, not sexually abusive, but physically abusive to me as a child, and that we just did not have a relationship, but that he thought that I was a good mother. At the end of the trial, Roger Page gave full custody of my daughter to her father. He ordered for me to undergo mental evaluations and anger management, complete 8 weeks of anger management at Pathways. He also ordered me to continue taking my prescribed mental health prescriptions from Pathways. I've never been prescribed anything from Pathways other than a 1989 ADD medication. He also ordered the only way that I could see my daughter was supervised by my father, who testified that we had no relationship. I did that. I went through the supervisions with my father. I went through the mental evaluate. I was scared to death to go to Pathways. I was afraid I was going to get electric shocks. So I went and I paid a private psychologist, and he polled a bunch. It was a very long, expensive ordeal. He polled a bunch of people, set me up to see my anger, and then found and wrote a finding to the court that I was in no way of need of any anger management, no need of any anger management, not a candidate for any mental health counseling, and had no personality disorders, was 100% sane, and tested slightly higher on my anger scale due to my current situation. I had been a year without my daughter. When I filed that in Judge Page's court, he recused himself and said he no longer had time to hear the case. And Senior Judge Walter Kurtz out of Nashville, Tennessee, was designated to hear our case. In the divorce order, my ex was ordered to undergo random drug testing every month. I'm supposed to get 2 phone calls a week, 1 hour, 3 hours a week supervised visits with my daughter. I filed the same findings that Dr. Pickering, the counselor the doctor who had evaluated me, I filed those with Judge Kurtz. I also filed affidavits of the probation officer that Tim was supposed to take his drug test to, saying that he had never been to a drug test, and my cell phone records, and my supervisor there to testify that I was not getting my visits. Tim has always been given an excuse. The judges have always made an excuse for him. He's never gone to a drug test. I don't get my phone calls. I don't get the visits the way I'm supposed to. And he's never been held in contempt of court. I was sentenced to 2 days in jail November of last year for being 2 months behind in child support. It's been 1,033 days that I've gone without my youngest daughter. At the hands of political corruption in Madison County. August the 20th, after my appeal was denied, I appealed both cases all the way as far as I could, Tennessee Supreme Court, and my appeal was denied with Josie. I argued that he had no rights. There were no rights for him to have any visitation. He wasn't on her birth certificate, and this was just completely contrary to established custody laws. It was denied all the way up to Supreme Court. I have gone down every legal avenue allowed to me for justice. I have filed complaints with the Court of the Judiciary. They've been dismissed within days. I have been to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. I have been to the Jackson office of the FBI, the Memphis office of the FBI. I have our district attorney, Jerry Woodall, sent a letter to to the head of the TBI, John Mayer, starting a criminal investigation into Christy Little. I have John Mayer on tape 4 months later, the TBI agent that received the letter, saying that he never did any investigation and that letter was only sent to me to shut me up, basically. I have been everywhere. I've been blocked 3 different times from presenting my case to the state grand jury. I've testified on Capitol Hill at the General Assembly a few times about Judge Little's drunkenness and substance abuse on the bench. There have been multiple victims other than myself, but most people in Jackson are scared to death to say a word because of what's happened to me and other people like me. Finally, after 959 days of fighting for my daughters, I was heard by an unbiased judge in the custody case of Josie, and I was awarded full custody of Josie August the 20th, 2012. She's been home for 2 months, and it's been the best 2 months ever. We've had a lot of work to do on her understanding the whole situation, but she's happy and I'm happy. Since getting custody of Josie, I have had a couple of different meetings with the good old boys themselves and been pretty much guaranteed that I will not ever be getting custody of Andy Fay. Andy Fay's grandfather is Thomas Roseborough. He's the head dean of Union University. And I think a political combination of my fight against the judges and the power that Union University has is going to ensure that I never have custody of her. I have had to contemplate giving up my fight for her. It's kind of a child for a child issue. I'm not necessarily neglecting, but I can't be the mother that I need to be for Josie while I have the fight that I have in front of me with Andy Fay. And I can't comprehend having to give up this fight. But I know, being told out of the mouth of itself that it's not going to happen for me, I don't really have any other choice. I know that my actions ultimately ended me up here. I shouldn't have two daughters from 2 different men, but I do, as a lot of people do. That doesn't make my daughters a target for the crime that's been committed in our family, and it is a crime. I'm sorry. As of a lot of cases that you'll hear in this movie, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Luckily, I have the opportunity to be a mother to Josie. I will always be Andy Fay's mother, regardless of the corruption that tries to keep that. I would have never in a million years have believed this story 4 years ago. I would have never believed that good parents have their children taken from them and kept from them for no reason, for political gain or favors. I tell this story to people and half of them slowly back away from me, scared, wondering what in the world has she really done, what's happened. They don't believe it. No, but I wouldn't have believed it. Believe it and before it happens to you. There have got to be laws rules put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen. Bias and political favor cannot be tolerated in family courts and criminal courts. On any authority, it can't be tolerated. Innocent people are hurt terribly, and it only ensures the system. It only keeps the wheels turning. Judges are already given immunity in courts, judicial immunity. They say except for anything but crimes. Judges commit crimes every day and are given immunity. Our legislators in Tennessee has now failed to ensure what the Constitution gave them the responsibility to do. They are a checks and balance of our judicial system, and I have seen it firsthand in the Tennessee legislatures. We're going to impeach a judge. They had spoken of it, they had talked about getting the files, there was much concern, and with one phone call from a heavy-hitting Republican contributor, Mr. Jimmy Wallace, everything stopped on the action with Christy Little. The General Assembly confirmed to me of the strings that were pulled. I had one brave secretary in an office call me and tell me that this had happened and that she was sorry, but she had to tell me because of the fight that I had gone through, and that she knew it was true because she herself had taken in all the phone calls from the hundreds of other victims of Christy Little. I would have never believed it, and I would just hope that you believe it before it's too late.